Okay, for today I'm gonna be making an open face apple pie. And to get started, I first need to prepare the pie crust. This is pie dough for the crust that I made last night. And the first thing you want to do is cut it in half. And this half is going to be for the bottom half of the crust. And this half you're going to use for the top. And I'll show you what to do when the time comes for that. But right now I'm just gonna, since this has been in the refrigerator overnight, I'm gonna let this thaw out for about 20 minutes before I roll it out. Alright, now with my pie dough rolled out, I'm just gonna put it on my rolling pin like this and transfer it to my pie plate. Alright, now that it's on your pie plate, what you want to do is, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut the extra dough off of it. But I want to leave some on, so I'm only cutting it to leave about 1/4 of an inch on to the edges. And you'll see why later. Now with your pie crust in your pie pan, you want to go ahead and lightly cover it with plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator from at least 1 hour, and it could be in there for 24 hours. And with your pie crust in the refrigerator, it's time to work with this piece of dough. So like the other one, I'm gonna let this sit out for 20 minutes before I start to roll it out. And we're not gonna use this for crust on the pie really, it's gonna be for decoration. Okay, now with your second piece of dough rolled out, you wanna get a leaf cut out. Make sure you flour it. And I bought this on Amazon or eBay, and just go ahead and cut out some leaf shapes like this. And when I've done this recipe in the past, I've needed 26 of these, but I always do extra just in case you never know if one's gonna come apart or anything like that. So I always make about 30, something like that. Alright, I've gone ahead and cut 35 of these out and covered it with plastic wrap, and I'm gonna put this in the refrigerator until I need it. Alright, it's been a little over an hour and I just took it out of the refrigerator. So now what you want to do is you want to get a piece of parchment paper and push it down so it fits in every corner of the pie crust. And now what you want to do is, I'm using dried beans. You could use pie weights, but you want to go ahead and put either your beans or your pie weights inside the pie crust like this. And the reason you do this is you're gonna have to blind bake this for 20 minutes. And the reason I'm doing that is so that the crust doesn't shrink up when I bake the pie. So go ahead and put this in a 425-degree oven for 20 minutes. And while you're blind baking your crust, go ahead and get your apples ready. You need 2.5 pounds of apples, so I'm doing Granny Smith. And you need to go ahead and peel them. And for that, I'm going to use my spiralizer attachment for my KitchenAid. And with my KitchenAid, using my spiralizer attachment, I can peel all of my apples in about 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm just gonna do all of them like that, and then I'll be back. Okay, now that my crust is out of the oven, you wanna take your parchment paper and lift it out with the beans on it. And now what you wanna do is you wanna take a fork and just go ahead and prick the bottom and sides. And once you have everything pricked, go ahead and put this back in the oven for 5 to 10 minutes. And now what you want to do is you want to take a big bowl and your apples, which I have in a pot of water beside me so they won't get brown. But now with my apples, I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. I freshly squeezed that. I'm going to add in 1/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. And I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar. And I'm going to add 1 1/2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. And I'm just going to use my hands and mix this all together. Okay, now with my apples mixed with my sugars and spices, I'm going to go ahead and let this sit at room temperature from at least a ½ hour up to 3 hours. Okay, it's been about an hour and my apples have been sitting on the counter. And now what I'm gonna do is take a bowl and I don't have any more as big as this had to clean, so I'm gonna just take this bowl, put a strainer in there, and dump my apples in here. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can get all the juices from my apples. Alright, now once I have my apple juices, I transfer them to a small saucepan. And I put 2 tablespoons of butter in with it. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring this to a boil. And I'm gonna reduce the liquid until it's slightly caramelized. And while my apple juices are on the stove coming to a boil, I'm gonna take my apples, and right here I've got 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. I'm gonna go ahead and add that. And I'm just gonna use my hands to toss this together until you can't see any of the cornstarch anymore. Okay, now that my liquid has reduced slightly and has caramelized, I'm gonna go ahead and pour it on my apples. And I'm gonna use a wooden spoon just to mix it all in. And for this next step, it's time to assemble the apple pie. But while it was off camera, I went ahead and trimmed up all the extra pie crust that was around the edges. And you'll see more of why I had to do that after I finish this step coming up. But what you want to do now is you want to take each apple piece and just put it in the pie like this. And you want to overlap the next one with the one before it. You want to try to get the biggest ones on the outside. At least that's what I do. So go ahead and go all the way around the crust until you use up all the apples. Okay, so now that all the apple pieces are in your pie, you can see the ones that the spiralizer didn't quite peel, but that's okay. It's just going to be me eating it. And you want to go ahead and take your leaves that you cut out. And I've got a large beaten egg over here. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a leaf and you're going to put some egg wash on the bottom of it. And you're going to place it on your pie. And I'm going to put mine at an angle. And I'm going to do that with all my leaves, and then I'll be back to show you what it looks like. Okay, well here it is with the leaves on it. And actually this is the reason why when you put the crust in to start off with, you left a little hanging over. Because for any reason, if the crust shrank while it was blind baking, which it shouldn't have, but just in case, if it would have, you would have had nothing except your pie plate to put the leaves on. This way you're sure to have some crust to put the leaves on. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to brush the top of each leaf with some egg wash. Okay, with the top of the leaves brushed with egg wash, what you want to do is gently cover it with some plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator for half an hour. Okay, my pie's been in the refrigerator for half an hour, so now it's time to put it in a 425-degree oven for 15 minutes. You want to make sure that your oven rack is in the bottom position in your oven. And you want to have either a baking stone or a cookie sheet on there, because you're going to want to bake this on that cookie sheet or baking stone. And after the first 15 minutes are finished, you want to take a piece of tin foil and cut vent holes in it like this. And go ahead and put this on top of the pie. You want to loosely put it on top of the pie, but cover everything. And continue to bake it for 45 to 50 minutes. Okay, here it is. It just came out of the oven. After baking it for the first 15 minutes, I put the tin foil on it and baked it an additional 48 minutes. And then once that was over, I took the tin foil off of it and baked it an additional 5 minutes. So that's the total time that it was in the oven.